Marcus Chen stood in the grand hall of the Valdari Imperial Palace. Feeling completely out of place around him towered beings of elegant beauty with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their eyes were large and luminous, shifting colors. Like oil on water, they moved with grace that made every gesture look like dance, and they were all staring at him with barely concealed disgust. Assignment had come through official channels 3 days ago, personal guardian to Princess Lyara. Crown heir to the Valdari Empire, Marcus had 20 years of security experience, had protected ambassadors and dignitaries across 6 star systems, but he knew what this really was, an insult to both him and the princess the Valdari barely tolerated. Humans in their space, seeing them as primitive newcomers who stumbled into galactic society only 2 generations. Ago Commander Vesh, a tall Valdari, with deep purple robes, approached without looking directly at Marcus. The human will follow protocol. At all times, the commander said, speaking to the air, as if Marcus was not there. He will not address the princess, unless addressed first. He will not touch any Valdari without explicit permission. He will maintain distance of no less than 3 meters. At all times Marcus nodded, keeping his face neutral. He had dealt with worse discrimination on other assignments. At least here, it was honest disdain rather than fake smiles hiding. Contempt. The doors at the far end opened, and Princess Lyara entered. The hall. Marcus' first thought was that she looked tired. Her silver skin seemed duller than the others, and her movements lacked the flowing grace he had seen in other Valdar. She wore deep blue robes that covered most of her form and her hair. An unusual shade of platinum white was pulled back severely from her face. She did not look at Marcus, not even a glance. Commander Vesh bowed deeply, and the princess spoke in the melodic Valdari language, her voice soft but clear. Marcus's translator. Implin rendered her words a moment later, informed the human of his duties, keep him out of sight during public functions. That was it. She turned and glided away, leaving Marcus standing there, feeling like a piece of furniture being discussed. The first 3 days were exactly as uncomfortable as Marcus expected. He followed the princess through endless palace corridors, staying exactly 3 meters behind. She never spoke to him, never looked back. Her attendants, a group of younger Valdari, treated him the same way. They would step around him as if he was an obstacle, deliver messages about schedule changes too. Commander Vesh, who would then tell Marcus as if he had not been standing right there, but Marcus was a professional, and professionals noticed things. He noticed how Princess Lyara flinched when passing certain corridors, how her hands trembled slightly during the formal afternoon ceremony in the throne room, how she dismissed her attendants earlier each evening, how she never quite met anyone's eyes, even her own people. On the 3rd night, Marcus was in his assigned quarters, a small room near the palace guard station, trying to sleep on a bed designed for Valdari proportions, all length and no width. He had just drifted off when something jolted him awake. It was not a sound, it was a feeling like ice water being poured directly into his brain. Sensation of pure terror that made his heart slam against his ribs. Marcus was on his feet, instantly combat, instincts overriding confusion. He grabbed his weapon and ran toward the source of the princess quarters. The palace corridor was chaos. Valdari guards were on the floor, some unconscious, others writhing in apparent agony, the few still standing looked disoriented, clutching their heads. Marcus pushed past them, the feeling of terror growing stronger with each step, but somehow it did not overwhelm him. It was there in his mind, but distant like hearing. Someone screamed from far away. He reached the princess chambers. The doors were open inside. Lyara was on her bed, thrashing, her eyes closed, her mouth open in a silent scream. Waves of psychic energy poured off her, visible as distortions in the air like heat shimmer. Marcus felt each wave hit him, felt the terror, the pain, the desperate fear, but it did not drop him like it had the Valdari guards. His human mind, lacking the telepathic receptors that every Valdari possessed, could not fully process the psychic assault. He felt it, but it could not shut him down. Marcus moved to the bedside, doing what every instinct and every protocol told him not to do. He reached out and touched the princess' shoulder gently but firmly. Lyara, he said, keeping his voice steady. Princess Lyara, wake up. The effect was immediate. The psychic storm faltered. Lyara's eyes snapped open, glowing bright with residual energy. She stared at Marcus, her expression cycling through confusion, fear, and then shock. "You," she whispered, her voice raw. "How are you?" Standing, Marcus kept his hand on her shoulder, feeling her trembling. "Everyone else is down," he said simply. "You were having a nightmare." Nightmare? Liara sat up slowly, looking past Marcus to see her attendants collapsed in the doorway beyond them. More fallen guards. She covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh, no, I did not mean to. I could not stop at tits, okay?" Marcus said, stepping back now, giving her space. "But staying alert, your guards will recover. They are already starting to wake." PR looked at him, really looked at him. "For the first time since he arrived, you are human," she said, as if just remembering. "You do not have telepathy. You could not feel the full force." "I felt enough," Marcus said, "but yeah, it did not knock me out like the others." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Liara did something that surprised him. She laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was bitter and exhausted. "Of course," she said, "of course, the only person who can help me is the one I have been treating like he does not exist." The irony is almost funny. Marcus said nothing. Waiting, she wrapped her arms around herself, looking suddenly very young and very vulnerable. "This has been happening for months," she said quietly. "Every few nights, sometimes worse. The physicians call it psychic cascade disorder. My nightmares are so strong they hurt anyone telepathic nearby. I have been sleeping alone, keeping everyone away, but it is getting worse." Me, Marcus asked. "Why can I help?" "Because you are silent," she said, meeting his eyes. "Your mind is blank to me. No thoughts, no emotions leaking through you. Are like a wall of quiet in a world that never stops screaming. And apparently, that wall can walk through my nightmares without falling down." Marcus considered this, then made a decision. "I will stay nearby," he said. "If this happens again, I can wake you before it gets too bad." Liara looked like she wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the cold distance, but exhaustion and relief won out. She nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time since Marcus arrived, he heard genuine emotion in her voice. That night marked a change. It was small, almost invisible to the outside world, but between Marcus and Princess Liara, something had shifted. She had seen him not as the primitive human guard, but as the only person in the entire palace who could stand in her darkness without being destroyed. And Marcus had seen past the cold, dismissive princess to the person underneath, someone scared and suffering and trying desperately to hold everything together alone. Neither of them knew it yet, but that night would change everything, not just for them, but for the entire Valdari Empire. Because sometimes the strongest bonds form in the darkest moments between the most unlikely people, and sometimes the help you need comes from the last place. You ever thought to look Part 2? The Nightmares Between Worlds. Morning after the nightmare incident brought subtle changes that Marcus noticed immediately. Princess Liara still maintained formal distance in public, still moved through the palace with careful composure, but she spoke directly to him. Now no more communicating through attendants, no more pretending he was invisible. "Marcus Chen," she said during the morning security briefing, her voice carrying the careful politeness of someone trying to make amends, "you will accompany me to the garden terrace this afternoon." "I prefer to review correspondence there." "Yes, Princess," Marcus replied, keeping his tone professional. The palace physicians came that same morning, 3 elderly Valdar, with deep knowledge of mental disciplines. They examined Liara behind closed doors while Marcus waited outside. When they emerged, their faces showed concern mixed with frustration. Commander Vesh received their report in hushed, telepathic conversation, but Marcus caught enough from their body language to understand nothing had changed. They had no solution for her condition. Later, that afternoon on the garden terrace, surrounded by floating, luminescent flowers that responded to thought, Liara sat reviewing holographic documents. Marcus stood at his regulation distance, watching the perimeter, but also watching her. She looked tired again, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. Her hands moved precisely through the holograms, but there was tension in her shoulders that had not been there when she first entered the garden. "You have questions?" Liara said, without looking up from her work. "I can tell, even without reading your mind. Humans have very expressive faces." Marcus considered his words carefully. "Is there anything that helps?" he asked. "The nightmares?" Liara was quiet for a moment, still focused on the documents. "Distance," she said, finally, "keeping people away helps. The fewer minds nearby, the less damage I cause when it happens. But it does not stop the nightmares themselves. Nothing stops them. Are they about Marcus? Asked Liara. Hand stopped moving. She looked up at him fully, and for a moment Marcus saw past all the prince's composure to raw pain underneath death. She said, simply watching people die and being unable to help them, she dismissed the holograms with a gesture and stood walking to the terrace edge where the view opened onto the palace gardens below. 6 months ago, I led a diplomatic mission to the border territories. We were supposed to negotiate trade agreements with the frontier colonies. Simple routine, but it was not routine. Marcus said. Pirates, Liara said, her voice steady, but her hands gripping the terrace railing tight. They hit our ship in deep space. Killed half the crew in the first attack. I was with my personal guard, my friends, people I had known since childhood. We tried to reach the escape pods. She stopped and Marcus waited, giving her time to continue at her own pace. I am telepathic, she said. All Valdari are, but my abilities are stronger than most. I am crown heir partly because of that strength. When my guards died, I felt it, Marcus. I felt every moment, every thought, every emotion they broadcast in their final seconds. Fear, pain, regret. I felt all of it at once, and I could not stop it, could not block it out, could not help them. How did you survive? Marcus asked gently. I hid, Liara said, and there was shame in her voice. I found a maintenance shaft and I hid while my friends died protecting me. The pirates left, eventually took what they wanted from the ship. Rescue came. 3 hours later, they found me alone, surrounded by bodies, and the Empire called it a success, Marcus said understandingly. Laughed that bitter sound again. They celebrated my survival, elevated me to crown heir for my bravery under fire, gave medals to the families of the dead. Everyone who knows the truth was sworn to secrecy. The Empire cannot show weakness, especially not in the royal family. So, you carry it alone, Marcus said. Until now. Liara turned to look at him. Yes, until a human guard walked through my nightmare. Like it was nothing more than bad weather that night. Marcus moved his sleeping quarters to the room adjacent to Liara chambers. The palace staff whispered about impropriety, but Commander Vesh reluctantly approved it when the physicians explained the situation. Marcus was the only one who could help, and they needed the princess functional for the upcoming coronation ceremony. Nightmares came again. 2 nights later, Marcus woke to that now familiar sensation of ice in his brain. He was through the connecting door in seconds, finding Liara in the grip of another psychic storm. This time he knew what to do. Sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand, speaking her name firmly but not harshly, grounding her in the present. Liara, wake up, you are safe, it is just a dream. Her eyes opened wild at first, then focusing on him, the storm calmed gradually, the pressure in Marcus's head easing. Marcus, she said, breathless. How many times? This is the second time I have seen, he said. Do you want to talk about it? They talked for an hour that night, Liara describing the nightmare. Marcus listening without judgment, without trying to fix anything, just being present in the darkness with her. When she finally felt calm enough to try sleeping, again she looked at Marcus with something like wonder. You do not fear me, she said. Should I? Marcus asked. T could kill you with a thought. Liara said, if I lost control, if the nightmares became too strong, my mind could shatter yours, but you will not. Marcus said with certainty. How do you know? Liara asked. Because you have not yet. Marcus said, and you have had plenty of chances. You are stronger than you think, princess. The nightmares have not broken you. I feel broken, Liara, whispered. Marcus shook his head. Broken, things do not function. You are still here, still fighting. That is not broken, that is surviving over. The following weeks a routine developed. The nightmares came every few nights, sometimes mild, sometimes severe. Marcus was always there, always ready to walk through her psychic storm and bring her back. During the days they talked more than protocol required. Liara asked about Earth, about human history, about how his species survived being alone in the universe before first contact. We had no telepathy, she said. No way to share thoughts or emotions directly. How did you endure the isolation? We adapted, Marcus said. We learned to communicate with words, with art, with action. We learned to trust without reading minds to connect despite the silence between us. That sounds lonely, Liara said sometimes. Marcus agreed, but it also made us resilient. We could not feel each other's pain, so we learned to describe it. We could not share joy directly, so we learned to celebrate together. Humans survived because we chose connection, even when it was hard. Yara was quiet, thinking about this. I have spent months pushing connection away, she said finally, fearing what my mind might do to others. That is different, Marcus said. You were protecting people that takes strength to. But you walked in anyway, Liara said, smiling slightly, despite the danger, despite everything. Marcus shrugged. Someone had to night after a particularly bad nightmare. Liara did not let go of Marcus's hand right away. I need to tell you something, she said. The coronation ceremony is in 40 days. I have to link minds with the entire High Court. If they sense instability, if they feel my trauma, I will be rejected as crown heir. What happens then? Marcus asked. House Morthon takes the throne, Liara said, and they will undo everything my father has worked for. They are isolationists who want to close the empire to outsiders, especially humans, so we have 40 days to help you heal, Marcus said. Liara shook her head. Healing might take years, Marcus. I do not need to heal. I need to learn to function despite the damage. I need to be strong enough to hide it during the ceremony, or Marcus said carefully. You need to be strong enough to show it and still be worth. Alara stared at him. That is impossible. No Faldari would accept a crown heir with psychic trauma. It shows weakness on Earth. Marcus said, we have a saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Maybe your people need to learn that strength comes in different forms. Liara wanted to argue, but something in Marcus's words resonated. Maybe she thought maybe there is another way there. Bond deepened after that conversation. Not romance exactly, but something equally profound, a trust that crossed species and circumstance. In a palace full of telepaths, Liara found strange comfort in the one mind she could not read. And Marcus found purpose in standing guard over someone who society said should not need him. The nightmares continued, but slowly, imperceptibly, they began to change. Liara still dreamed of death, still felt the echoes of her friends' final moments. But now in the dreams there was also a quiet presence, a wall of silence that held firm against the storm. She was not alone anymore, and that made all the difference. Part 3. The Emperor's Ultimatum. Summons came on a morning when frost covered the palace gardens. Emperor Thorian required Marcus's presence in the private throne room immediately. No explanation given, no time to prepare. Commander Vesh delivered the message with barely hidden satisfaction, clearly expecting Marcus to be dismissed or worse. Marcus walked through the palace corridors with steady purpose. Despite the knot in his stomach, he had known this moment would come. Emperor was not blind. Servants talked, guards noticed a human spending nights near the crown. Air chambers was not something that could stay secret forever. Private throne room was smaller than the grand hall, but far more intimidating it was. Circular, with walls of dark crystal that seemed to absorb light. At the center, on a throne that looked carved from a single piece of midnight stone, sat Emperor Thorian. Was tall, even for Valdari, his silver skin marked with faint patterns that denoted age and wisdom. His eyes were deep gold, and when they focused on Marcus, it felt like being examined by something far older and more powerful than human understanding. Emperor did not speak immediately. Marcus stood at attention, waiting. The silence stretched on for a full minute before Thorian finally spoke. Marcus. Jen. The Emperor voice was deep, resonant. Carrying weight that had nothing to do with volume, you have become important to my daughter. It was not a question, but Marcus answered anyway. I serve as her guardian. Your Majesty, you serve as more than that. Thorian said. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing surveillance footage of Marcus entering Liara chambers at night, leaving in the early morning hours. You are the only person she allows close during her episodes. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor stood and descended from the throne, stopping a few feet from Marcus. Do you know what it means that she needs you? He asked. That the crown heir to the Valdari Empire can only find peace with a human, a species we considered primitive, barely worth notice, until 2 generations ago. Marcus chose his words carefully. I know it is politically complicated, Your Majesty. Complicated Thorian repeated, a harsh laugh escaping him. It is a disaster, Marcus. Chen, if the High Court learns that my daughter suffers from psychic cascade disorder, so severe that only a non-telepathic human can help her, they will reject her. Claim they will see it as fundamental weakness, as proof she cannot lead, then perhaps they should not know, Marcus said. The Emperor eyes flashed. They already suspect House Morthan has spies everywhere. They are spreading rumors about you and Liara. About inappropriate relations, about human contamination of the royal bloodline. They are subtle but effective. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. We have done nothing inappropriate. No, Thorian said, surprising him. I have read the reports. I have spoken to the physicians. You are helping my daughter in the only way anyone can, and for that I am grateful. But gratitude does not change political reality. So what happens now, Marcus? Thorian turned away, pacing slowly. That is why I summoned. You two offer you a choice. Leave tonight with honors and wealth beyond anything you could earn in 10 lifetimes. I will guarantee your silence through imperial decree. You will never want for anything, Marcus Chen. And the Princess, Marcus said, will manage, Thorian said without looking back. She managed before you came. She will manage after you leave, but she was not managing. Marcus said firmly. She was drowning, Your Majesty. Barely holding on. I have read the medical reports from before I arrived. The episodes were getting worse, lasting longer, causing more damage. Thorian stopped pacing. You dare presume to lecture me about my own daughter? I presume nothing, Marcus said, but I know what I have seen. She needs help. And right now, I am the only one who can give it. Sending me away might solve your political problem, but it will destroy Hertha. Emperor turned back, his expression unreadable. And if you stay, he asked, what then? Then the first help her prepare for the coronation. Marcus said, I help her find strength in what she has survived. I help her prove to the High Court that trauma does not equal weaknesses. Of 30 days, Thorian said, the coronation cannot be delayed further. 30 days to help my daughter overcome psychic trauma that has defeated our best physicians, our most skilled mental healers. If you fail, she will be exposed during the ceremony. The High Court will censor instability, and everything will fall apart. And if we succeed, Marcus asked, then perhaps the Empire learns something new, Thorian said. Perhaps we learn that strength comes in forms we did not expect but understand. Marcus Chen. If you stay, you become a target. House Morthan will not simply allow you to help Liara. They will try to remove you by any means necessary. I understand, Marcus said. Do you? Thorian moved closer, his voice dropping low. They will not challenge you directly. They will be subtle accidents, poisonings, discrediting you through scandal. This game, Marcus Chen, and you are one human in a palace full of potential enemies, have been a target before. Marcus said, standing firm. I can handle it. The Emperor studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, you may stay, but hear me clearly. If at any point I believe your presence is causing more harm than good, I will remove you myself regardless of my daughter's wish. Your Majesty. Marcus said, dismissed. Thorian said, returning to his throne, and Marcus, one more thing. Marcus stopped. At the door, yes, Your Majesty, thank you, the Emperor said quietly, for caring about her when it would have been easier not. To Marcus nodded and left the private throne room, feeling the weight of what he had just agreed to. 30 days to achieve the impossible, with enemies circling and the fate of an entire empire hanging in the balance. No pressure, he thought wryly. That evening, he told Liara about the meeting, leaving nothing out. She listened in silence, her expression shifting from anger to fear to determination. He gave you a choice, she said finally, and you chose to stay. Chose to help. Marcus corrected. Liara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. This puts you in danger. Marcus. House Morthan does not make empty threats. I know, Marcus said. Then why? She turned to face him. Why risk everything for someone you barely know, from a species that has treated yours with contempt? Marcus met her eyes. Because it is the right thing to do, because you deserve help. Because maybe I am tired of humans being treated as lesser, and this is a chance to prove otherwise. Take your pick. Liara smiled slightly. All of the above. Probably, Marcus admitted. They began working in earnest the next day. Liara taught Marcus about Valdari meditation techniques about mental disciplines that helped control psychic overflow. Marcus introduced concepts from human psychology, exposure therapy, gradually confronting trauma rather than hiding from it. It was not easy, Liara resisted. At first, the idea of deliberately facing her memories of that day seemed impossible, but Marcus was patient. They started small, discussing the attack in fragments. Just pieces of memory 3. Days and Marcus noticed other human guards being reassigned. Transferred to different posts given sudden leave, the message was clear: he was being isolated. Made vulnerably weak in the accidents, began a training weapon that malfunctioned, nearly taking his head off food that made him violently ill for 2 days. A corridor where the gravity plating suddenly failed, dropping him 3 meters. He survived all of it, but the message was clear. House Morathan was coming for him. Liara noticed too. She insisted Marcus take precautions, taste testers for his food, alternative routes through the palace, constant vigilance. She used her authority to keep at least a few trusted guards nearby, but her power was limited. She was crown heir, but not yet empress. With 20 days until coronation, they hit a breakthrough. Liara agreed to attempt a controlled memory share, a psychic projection where she would show Marcus exactly what happened on that ship, not just tell him, but let him experience it through her. Telepathic senses. It was the most terrifying thing Marcus had ever experienced. He felt the pirate attack through Liara mind, felt her friends die, felt their final thoughts, their terror, their love for her, their desperate hope that she would survive. He felt her guilt, her shame, her overwhelming helplessness. When it ended, Marcus was on his knees, shaking, tears streaming down his face. Liara was beside him, also shaking, also crying, but something had changed. Felt it, she whispered. You truly felt what I carry. Marcus nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he found his voice. Yes, and I am still Hera. Lara looked at him with wonder. That should have broken you, she said. That much psychic trauma shared directly should have shattered a human mind. Maybe, Marcus said, his breathing slowly steadying. Or maybe the human mind is tougher than you think. They sat together on the floor of her chambers, both exhausted, both changed by what they had shared, and Liara realized something profound. She was not weak for carrying this burden. She was incredibly strong, because that much trauma would have destroyed most telepaths, would have left them catatonic or worse. But she was still here, still fighting, still trying. Marcus showed her that not by words, but by walking into her darkness and surviving it with here. From that night forward, everything shifted. Liara stopped trying to hide the trauma and started learning to integrate it, to accept it as part of her story. Marcus stood beside her every step of the way, his quiet human strength anchoring her. When the memories threatened to pull her under 10 days until coronation, and they both knew the real test was coming, House Morathan had been too quiet for the past few days, which meant something big was coming, something that would either break them completely or forge them into something unbreakable. They were about to find out which. Part 4. The night of the blood moon 10 days before coronation, the palace prepared for the blood moon festival, an ancient Valdari tradition celebrating the alignment of 3 moons that occurred once every generation. The celebration required the palace defensive shields to be lowered, allowing the moonlight to flood the grounds unfiltered. It was considered sacred, necessary for the ceremonial blessings. It was also, Marcus realized, the perfect time for an assassination. He voiced his concerns to Commander Vesh, who dismissed them with barely concealed contempt. The blood moon is tradition. Human, no enemy would dare violate its sanctity. Besides, House Morathan has been invited as honored guests. They would not risk open warfare. That is exactly why they will strike. Marcus argued when everyone expects peace. Vesh turned away, ending the conversation, but Liara listened. She quietly doubled her personal guards, kept Marcus close, and made sure the few people she truly trusted were positioned strategically. The festival began at sunset, with the palace grounds transformed into something magical. Floating lanterns drifted through the air. Musicians played haunting melodies on instruments that responded to thought. Nobles from across the empire gathered in their finest robes. The 3 moons rose together, casting everything in shades of crimson and silver. Marcus wore formal guard armor, feeling overdressed and underprepared. He stayed within sight of Liara, who moved through the crowds, with practiced grace, accepting congratulations on her upcoming coronation, smiling at appropriate moments, playing her role perfectly. Lord Kavish of House Morthen approached near the gardens. He was tall, even for Valdar, with dark robes that seemed to absorb light. His smile was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. "Princess Lyara," he said, bowing precisely. "What a magnificent evening, Lord." Kavish Lyar replied, matching his formal tone, "We are honored by your presence." "The honor is mine, Kavish," said his gaze flickering to Marcus. "I see you keep your human close even during sacred festivals." "How progressive." "Marcus is my guardian," Liara said evenly. "Where I go, he goes, of course." Kavish's smile widened slightly. "I merely wonder what the ancestors would think, seeing a human at the blood. I'm in festival, but perhaps traditions change, perhaps everything changes." He drifted away, leaving a subtle threat hanging in the air. Marcus's hand moved to his weapon. Lyara caught his eye and shook her head slightly. Not yet. Her expression said, "Be ready." The evening progressed. The moons climbed higher. Nobles drank spice wine that glowed faintly with bioluminescence. Marcus noticed House Morthen members spreading through the crowd, too many of them too well positioned. Liara moved toward the private gardens, a quieter area away from the main celebration. Marcus followed, maintaining proper distance but every sense alert. The gardens were beautiful, luminescent flowers that opened only during blood moon, vines that hummed with stored psychic energy, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Peaceful, Marcus thought. Liara stopped near a fountain, examining one of the rare moon flowers. Marcus scanned the perimeter, counting exits, noting shadows. The gardens connected to the palace through 3 different passages, plus the open grounds behind them. Movement caught his eye. 3 figures entering from different directions, moving with purpose, not leisure. Marcus stepped closer to Liara, his hand on his weapon. "Princess, we need to leave," he said. Quietly, Liara turned to respond, but the attack came. First, the 3 figures revealed themselves House Morthen assassins wearing light armor, carrying neural disruptors, weapons designed to incapacitate through psychic overload. Marcus moved instantly, putting himself between Liara and the closest attacker. His weapon came up, firing twice. The first assassin went down, but the other 2 spread out, flanking. "Get behind me," Marcus ordered. Liara backing toward the fountain. The assassins were skilled, but they made a crucial mistake. They relied too heavily on telepathic intimidation, trying to freeze their targets with projected fear. It worked on most victims, their minds overwhelmed. But Marcus felt only distant pressure. His human brain lacked the receptors to fully process the attack he used. Their confusion, to his advantage, closed the distance with the second assassin before they realized their psychic assault had failed. A quick strike to the throat, followed by a disarm. The assassin went down gasping. The third assassin adjusted tactics, abandoning psychic attacks for physical ones. They were fast, inhumanly, so moving with Valdari grace. Marcus barely blocked the first strike, felt the impact shudder through his arm. This one was trained in actual combat, not just psychic domination. Exchanged blows, Marcus giving ground, protecting Liara, who was reaching for her own weapon, but a 4th figure emerged from the shadows. Someone Marcus had not seen. This one carried a different weapon, neural disruptor, but modified. Marcus saw their custom components, recognized military tech that should not exist here. The modified disruptor fired, hitting Marcus' center mass. He felt electricity arc through his body, felt his muscles lock, his nervous system override. Humans were not supposed to be vulnerable to neural disruptors, their brains wired differently, but this weapon had been specifically designed to work on him. Marcus went down, convulsing, his vision blurring. He heard Liara scream, heard the assassins closing in, and with the last of his conscious thought, he realized the truth. This was never about killing him, it was about making Liara watch him die, making her relive the trauma of losing someone she cared about right before her coronation, breaking her completely. But something unexpected happened. Liara did not break. She snapped. Marcus barely conscious heard a sound like thunder, felt pressure that made his teeth ache even through the neural disruptor effects. Managed to turn his head, see what was happening. Princess Liara, crown heir to the Valdari Empire, stood over his fallen body, and her psychic power exploded outward in a way it had not since that terrible day 6 months ago. But this was not panic, not uncontrolled fear. This was pure, focused rage of Valdari. On the palace grounds froze their minds, overwhelmed by the sheer force of her command. The assassins dropped their weapons, unable to move, unable to even think beyond the princess. Presence in their minds, Liara's voice rang out, amplified by her psychic abilities resonating in every telepathic mind within range. "You dare," she said, each word carrying the weight of imperial authority. "You dare attack under Blood Moon. You dare threaten my guardian. You dare think me weak." She reached into the assassins' minds. Marcus could see it in their faces, the terror, as she pulled their secrets, their orders, their allegiances, all laid bare. House Morathan conspiracy exposed. In that single moment, Imperial guards came running, drawn by the psychic disturbance. Commander Vesh arrived, white-faced, staring at the scene with shock. Liara stood in the center, holding 4 assassins, frozen with nothing but her will. Marcus still down, but conscious enough to witness her transformation. "This is not weakness," Liara said, speaking to the gathered crowd, to the guards, to everyone who could hear. "Weakness would have let them win. Weakness would have hidden, would have run, shied, released." She released the assassins from psychic hold. They collapsed, gasping. "Commander Vesh, take them," she ordered, her voice steel. "Find everyone involved in this conspiracy. Arrest them." Alvesh hesitated, but only for a moment. "Yes." "Princess," he said, bowing deeply. Liara knelt beside Marcus, the fury draining away, replaced by concern. "Are you all right?" she asked. Marcus managed a weak smile that was impressive. He said, his voice rafi. "Thought I lost you," she said quietly. "I thought they killed you. Something inside me refused to accept it, refused to be helpless again." "You were never helpless," Marcus said. "You were always this strong. You just needed a reason to use it." The neural disruptor effects faded slowly. Marcus was able to sit up, then stand with Liara, help. His body ached. Everything hurt, but he was alive. They both were. The investigation that followed moved swiftly with the assassins' minds. Already read by Liara, their confession was redundant, but Emperor Thorian insisted on formal proceedings. House Morathan leadership was arrested, their assets seized. Their claim to the throne dissolved, but the incident had consequences the entire court now knew about. Liara's condition knew she suffered from psychic trauma. The secret they had worked so hard to hide was exposed completely. Marcus waited for the backlash for the court to reject her, but something unexpected happened again. Young nobles began coming forward quietly at first. Then in growing numbers they spoke of their own hidden traumas, their own nightmares. Valdari society had treated mental health as shameful as weakness to be hidden, but Liara's public struggle, her courage in facing it, changed something fundamental. Lay junior diplomat revealed she had panic attacks. Before negotiations, a military officer admitted to trauma from combat. A scientist spoke about crippling anxiety that she hid for years. One by one, they came forward, inspired by the crown heir who refused to hide anymore. Emperor Thorian watched this unfold with something like awe. "My daughter," he said to Marcus privately, "has started a revolution without even trying, by simply being honest about her pain." But the coronation still loomed. The high court elders remained unconvinced. They saw the support from younger nobles, but they held the real power. They demanded the ritual proceed as planned, demanded proof that Liara could withstand the full mental link, or they would reject her claim and elevate another House 9. Days had become 3. The assassination attempt had cost them time. Marcus' injuries, though not severe, needed recovery. Liara was exhausted from the psychic exertion of stopping the attack. They were running out of time. "Can you do it?" Marcus asked her. "On the second night after the attack, can you face the high court? Let them into your mind?" Liara was quiet for a long time. "I do not know," she admitted honestly. "They will see everything. The attack, the deaths, the shame. They will judge whether I am worthy." "You are worthy," Marcus said firmly. "What you did, stopping those assassins, protecting me, that was not weakness, that was strength. They need to see that." "But what if they only see the broken parts?" she asked. "What if they decide trauma disqualifies me? Then they are fools," Marcus said. "And you prove them wrong by being the leader they need not. The one they think they want." Liara smiled sadly. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," Marcus said. "Not easy, but simple. You show them the truth, all of it, and let them decide." But you do not hide, you do not apologize, you stand firm in who you are, Scars. Included one day before coronation, Liara made her decision. She would face the High Court. She would open her mind completely, and whatever happened would happen. Marcus would not be able to help her during the ritual. Humans were not telepathic, could not participate in the mental link. He would stand with the guards watching from the outside, unable to protect her from this particular danger. But that night, before everything changed, Liara asked him one more question. When you walked into my nightmare, that first night, she said, what made you not afraid? Marcus considered the question carefully. I was afraid, he admitted, but I was more afraid of leaving you alone in the darkness sometimes. The right thing to do is the scary thing. You just do it anyway. That is very human, she said. Maybe Marcus smiled, but it works tomorrow. They would face the High Court, face centuries of tradition and expectation, but tonight they sat together in the quiet. Two people from different worlds who had learned that connection transcends species, that strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to face your demons. Lone Hash Part 5, The Coronation of Two Minds. The coronation morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through crystal spires. Marcus stood in his formal guard uniform, watching servants prepare the grand chamber where thousands would gather to witness Princess Liara either claim her throne or lose everything he had not slept the night before, kept awake by worry and the knowledge that today he could do nothing to help. Liara would face the High Court alone, would open her mind to their judgment, and Marcus could only watch. Liara sent for him an hour before the ceremony. He found her in her private chambers, wearing the traditional coronation robes, deep purple fabric that seemed to shimmer with captured starlight. Her platinum hair was arranged in the elaborate style of crown heirs, her face composed, but her hands trembled slightly. Wanted to see you, she said before it begins. How are you feeling? Marcus asked, though he already notified Liara. Admitted honestly, what if I open my mind and they reject me? What if everything we worked for means nothing to them? Then you will have tried, Marcus said, and that takes more courage than hiding. She smiled faintly. You always make things sound reasonable. I try, Marcus said, stepping closer. Listen to me, whatever happens in there, remember, you are not the same person you were 6 months ago. You faced your trauma, acknowledged it, integrated it. That makes you stronger, not weaker. But will they see it that way? Liara asked. Some will, Marcus said honestly. Some will not, but you show them anyway. You show them the truth and trust that enough of them have the wisdom to understand. Liara took a deep breath, nodded once. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Grand chamber filled quickly. Nobles from across the empire, senators, military leaders, representatives from allied species, though notably fewer humans than other groups. Marcus stood with the guard contingent positioned along the walls where he could see everything but participate in nothing. The High Court entered. Last 12 ancient Valdar carried the combined wisdom and power of their civilization. They moved slowly, taking positions around the central dais where Liara would stand. Emperor Thorian sat on a throne raised above the others, his expression carefully nurtured. Ferreira entered, and the chamber fell silent. She walked alone as tradition required, moving with careful grace to the center dais. She wore no crown yet, that would come only after the ritual, if she passed high. Elder Sarath, oldest of the court, spoke in the ancient tongue, the words translated through Marcus's implant. Princess Liara, you seek to claim the throne of the Valdari Empire, to become crown empress, and bear the weight of our people. Are you prepared to open your mind to our judgment? I am, Liara, said her voice steady, carrying through the vast chamber. Then let the ritual begin, Elder Sarath, said. The High Court moved in unison, surrounding Liara in a circle of 12, their hands raised, their eyes glowing with psychic energy. Marcus felt the pressure, even from across the chamber, felt the immense power being focused on one person.
Ow.
It was like standing near a star, feeling the heat without seeing. The Firelar closed her eyes and opened her mind. Marcus could not feel what happened next, could not sense the telepathic link being formed, but he saw its effects. Saw Liara body go rigid, saw several younger nobles in the audience gasp as psychic overflow reached them. The High Court was not gentle. They tore through her memories, examining everything, looking for weakness, for instability, for any reason to reject her. Claimed they found the attack, found her trauma, found the nightmares that had plagued her for months, Marcus watched Liara face, saw pain flicker across it, saw her struggling under the weight of 12 ancient minds judging her most vulnerable moments. She began to falter. Marcus could see it in the way her hands clenched, the way her breathing became labored. This was too much the pressure too. Intense, she was being crushed under the scrutiny. But then something changed. Liara's expression shifted from pain to focus, as if she remembered something important. She stopped trying to hide the trauma, stopped trying to minimize it. Instead, she did what Marcus taught her. She accepted it. She showed them everything, not just the attack, but the aftermath, the nightmares, the shame, the desperate attempts to hide her condition. And then she showed them, Marcus showed them a human guard walking into her psychic storm. Unaffected, showed them his steady presence during her darkest nights, showed them what she learned from someone whose mind she could not read. She projected the memory of Marcus into the court link, not his thoughts, which she could never access, but her memory of his presence. The sensation of being with someone whose mind was silent, whose strength came not from telepathy, but from simple, stubborn human determination. The high court recoiled. Marcus saw confusion ripple through them. This was outside their experience completely. Foreign, but Liara continued. She showed them what Marcus taught her about human resilience, about facing fear without telepathic unity, too deluded, about standing alone in the darkness and choosing to be strong anyway. She argued wordlessly through pure psychic projection that the Empire had grown complacent, that connection without understanding different perspectives had made them brittle, that they needed to learn from species like humans who survived impossible isolation and emerged stronger. The ritual continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Marcus watched helplessly as Liara made her case. As she laid her entire being bare for judgment, he saw some of the high court elders pulling back, saw rejection in their body language, but others leaned in, saw understanding dawning. Finally, the link broke. Liara staggered, the sudden disconnection leaving her disoriented. Elder Sarath caught her arm, steadied her. The ancient Valdari face was unreadable. "The High Court will deliberate," Sarath announced, stepping back. They formed a tight circle, their minds linking privately, discussing what they had seen. Marcus' heart pounded. He looked at Liara, who was breathing hard, exhausted from the ordeal. She caught his eye across the chamber, and he tried to project confidence. He did not feel the deliberation lasted 10 minutes that felt eternal. Finally, Elder Soroth turned to address the assembly. "The High Court has reached a decision," he announced. The chamber fell completely silent. "We have examined Princess Liara mind, have seen her trauma, her struggles, her methods of coping." Marcus stopped breathing. Elder Soroth continued, "We are divided. Some among us believe that psychic trauma of this magnitude disqualifies her from leadership, that reliance on a non-telepathic being shows fundamental weakness, that the Crown Empress must be beyond such vulnerabilities." "No." Marcus thought, "Please no." But Sarath was not finished. "Others among us see something different. They see strength in acknowledging weakness. They see wisdom in seeking help, regardless of its source. They see a leader who does not hide from truth, but faces it directly even when that truth is painful." The High Court vote is split 6-6. Elder Soroth said, "which means the decision falls to Emperor Thorian." As his traditional eyes turned to the Emperor, Thorian stood slowly, his face grave. He looked at Liara for a long moment, then spoke. "I vote for my daughter," he said clearly, "but not because she is my daughter. I vote for her because she has shown us something we desperately needed to see, that our empire has become rigid in our certainty, that we have forgotten how to learn from those we considered beneath." Yuj stepped down from his throne, approaching Liara. "Princess Liara has trauma, yes. She has nightmares. She required help from a human guard, but she did not let any of that stop her. She did not hide. She did not break. She adapted. She learned. She grew stronger in ways we did not expect." Thorian turned to address the full assembly. "I am adding a condition to her coronation," he announced. "A new position will be created, Guardian of the Silent Mind, an official advisor representing the perspectives of non-telepathic species. Marcus Chen will fill this position, serving as bridge between our people and those who think differently than we do." The chamber erupted in whispers, shock rippling through the nobles. Marcus stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. The Emperor continued. The Valdar Empire has stood for 10,000 years on the strength of our telepathic unity, but unity without diversity is stagnation. My daughter has shown us a new path forward, and I believe she is exactly the leader we need for the challenges ahead, Elder. Soroth nodded slowly. It is decided then. Princess Liara is approved by imperial decree. Let the coronation precede the ceremony. That followed was traditional ancient words, spoken crowns, exchanged oaths. Given, but everything felt different now. Liara was crowned not despite her trauma, but having acknowledged it openly, having shown strength through vulnerability rather than hiding weakness. When the crown touched her head when she became officially crown empress of the Valdari Empire, Liara eyes found Marcus in the crowd. She smiled, not the formal political smile, but genuine relief and gratitude, and Marcus smiled back, feeling pride swell in his chest. The celebration afterward was enormous. Nobles who had whispered about scandal now praised Liara Courage House Marithan. Remnants stayed silent, their conspiracy exposed, their power broken. Even the skeptical elders approached respectfully, acknowledging that perhaps the Empire did need to evolve. Marcus found himself surrounded by curious Valdari, asking about human psychology, about how non-telepathic species handled trauma. It was overwhelming, but he answered, patiently explaining that humans learned to survive through talking, through connection, that required effort, through choosing vulnerability, even when it was difficult. Late that night, after the crowds dispersed, after the formal celebrations ended, Marcus found Liara in the garden where the assassination attempt had occurred. She stood near the fountain, looking up at the stars. You should be celebrating, Marcus said, approaching carefully. You won, did I? Liara asked, turning to face him. I still have the nightmares, Marcus. The trauma did not disappear because I was crowned, no. Marcus agreed, but you proved it does not have to stop. You proved strength comes in many forms. Liara smiled. I proved what you taught me. She said, you walked into my darkness, Marcus. When everyone else fell, you stood firm. You showed me that being broken and being strong are not opposites. You were never broken, Marcus said. Just healing, and healing takes time. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out over the palace grounds, where lights flickered in celebration of the new Crown Empress. What happens now, Liara asked now. Marcus said, you lead, you change things, you show the Empire what you showed the High Court today, that vulnerability can be strength, that asking for help is courage, not weakness. And you, Liara asked, what do you do, Guardian of the Silent Mind? Marcus laughed at the title. I stand beside you, he said, same as always. When the nightmare Eskamai will be there when you need someone who cannot read your mind, who cannot judge your thoughts. I will be there, promise, Liara. Ask, promise, Marcus. Setha. Nightmares did not disappear, that much was true. Liara still dreamed of the attack, still felt echoes of those terrible moments, but now, when they came, Marcus was there, his presence steady and unchanging in the darkness. She learned not to fight the memories, but to acknowledge them, to let them pass like storms that eventually clear. The Empire changed too slowly at first, but building momentum, young Valdari began speaking openly about mental health, about struggles they had hidden for years. The stigma did not vanish overnight, but it began to fade. Liara, leadership by example of facing trauma publicly, started a conversation that rippled across the Empire. Marcus' position as guardian of the silent mind became more important than anyone expected. He advised on interactions with non-telepathic species, on strategies that did not rely on mind reading, on understanding perspectives that could not be sensed telepathically. The Empire began truly listening to voices they had dismissed as primitive. Months later, during a state dinner with delegates from Earth, Liara gave a speech that Marcus knew she had written herself years ago. She said, we, Valdari, believed our telepathy made us superior, that minds which could connect directly were inherently better than those that could not. But I learned something from a human guard who walked into my nightmares unafraid. I learned that strength is not about power, it is about resilience. It is not about perfection, it is about persistence. It is not about never falling, it is about standing back up. She looked directly at Marcus when she finished the speech, and he nodded slightly, understanding, passing between them without need for telepathy sometimes. The most profound connections exist in the silence and the space between minds, where words fail but presence remains. The HFY element of the story was not about humans being physically superior or technologically advanced. It was about a uniquely human quality, the ability to face darkness alone, to build strength from isolation, to find courage without the comfort of shared thoughts. Marcus showed the Faldari that telepathy was not the only path to connection, that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to stand with someone even when you cannot fully understand their pain, and in the end, that was what saved not just Princess Liara, but helped evolve an entire empire. The simple human truth that you do not have to be unbreakable to be strong, you just have to keep standing, especially for the people who need you most. Years later, when historians recorded the reign of Empress Liara, they would note that her greatest achievement was not military victory or economic prosperity, but cultural transformation. She changed how the Faldari viewed strength, viewed vulnerability, viewed the value of perspectives different from their own, and all of it started with a human guard who walked into a nightmare and refused to let a princess face her darkness alone, because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply being there when everyone else has fallen away, standing firm in the silence and saying without words or telepathy, "I see you, I stay, this matters." Was humanity gift to the galaxy? Not superior weapons or faster ships, but stubborn, compassionate presence in the face of darkness? The refusal to abandon someone just because helping them is hard, and in the vast cold universe filled with telepaths and ancient powers and species who could do remarkable things, that very human quality of showing up anyway proved to be exactly what was needed. The story of Marcus and Liara became legend, eventually a tale told across species about connection that transcends biology, about strength found in unexpected places, about how sometimes the person who saves you is the one you never expected, the one you almost dismissed, the one whose mind you cannot read but whose heart you learn to trust completely. And whenever young Faldari struggled with trauma, whenever they felt broken beyond repair, they were told about the Crown Empress, who had nightmares, about the human guard who walked through psychic storms, and about how together they proved that healing is not about becoming unbroken, it is about learning to be strong enough to carry your scars while still moving forward, still leading, still choosing hope over despair, connection over isolation. The end, that was the most human thing of all, not giving up on each other, not even when it would be easier to walk away, not even when the darkness seems overwhelming, because humans learned long ago, on a small blue planet before they ever touched the stars, that the only way to survive the night is together.